So welcome to the Mal and Johnny Show. And Johnny, you've got a very special guest this week. Now, when I first knew Steve Balsamo, he was a rock and roll singer. Then all of a sudden, he kept on going to London. He's joined us today. I'm from Swansea, I would have probably thought. So welcome to the Mal and Johnny Show, Steve.
Lovely to be here, Mal and Johnny. Thanks for...
How are you, Steve?
Doing well.
Yeah,
I'm feeling quite bald. I'm the only one without a beard.
What a lovely colour, Steve. Obviously, we can tell we're the indoor writers, whilst Johnny's out there making the most of the sunshine.
Yeah, I'm the palest by far today. Look at this.
I call it Johnny Mahogany Tudor. I call him Johnny Mahogany.
Yeah, I've been swimming today in the sea.
Yeah,
Very nice. I'm going to go later.
Yeah, because you've got the kids and everything, and they're growing up at a pace, aren't they? Are you able to enjoy the sunshine this summer?
I've had a little bit. It's been a funny old everything, isn't it, for the last however long? But I've been getting out and walking along the beachfront, and I'm going to go down and do an outdoor yoga thing today. I'm a bit of a hippie on the quiet, so down by the old observatory in Swansea, they do outdoor yoga.
Oh, wonderful!
All the way through the summer.
I saw them doing Tai Chi in Shanghai once. All the old blokes are doing all this.
Yeah, very good for you, all that. Shifting the energy around your body. And I did a load of martial arts as a kid, see, Mal and Johnny. I did karate for 20 odd years. So
I did Shotokan. I didn't do it for long. I got beat up a few times. So I gave it up. But it got me fit.
I'm a black belt in origami. So, right, now you boys, because you two know each other as well. How did you? Because like you were speaking last week.
Well, I only met him once, right? Really? I only met Steve once, and I think that was when you did. It was the BAFTAs, I think.
That's right.
And I heard, and you sang just a piano, and you did the Gethsemane song, and it blew me away. And there were some noisy buggers in the bloody audience. I had to go at them because they were talking when you were singing.
I remember that. And with the Jesus Christ Superstar, because that's a hell of a song to sing. Yeah. And to spark it in the middle of an evening like that was quite a hard thing to do. But we had to, as part of the journey with that musical part, I think, over the years. And I think I performed that in some very strange places.
Oh, we'll pick up on that now, because it was like a song that was written for you. I mean, I should explain to Johnny just before we started. That's the way you sing, isn't it? That song Gethsemane, which everybody says, how on earth does he sing like that? That's how you sing.
Yeah, well, I grew up listening to Ian Gillan, who originated the part, and people like Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin. I loved Ozzy Osbourne and Ronnie James Dio and all these kind of rock singers. I just loved all that stuff growing up. And all of the kind of high screaming falsetto stuff was really in my voice, Then I think everything's gone south since then, Johnny. I got to be honest.
As it does, Johnny. But, everything goes south eventually, Johnny, doesn't it?
I can only get up to F sharp. You know, right?
I don't even know what that is, but so all of that kind of high intensity rock singing was in my voice. And there was a fella in Swansea called Stuart Leary, lovely songwriter from Penlan. And he had me join his band. And it was kind of the days of that kind of hair metal stuff. It was kind of the mid-80s, kind of mid to late 80s. And I just started singing in bands, and I just had that kind of height in my voice. So Stuart wrote these bunch of songs, and we were in a band down here called After Dark, and they had a bit of a following around Swansea and around South Wales. And all of that stuff, we used to kind of do covers, and a few covers, but mostly his songs, but they were all very kind of rangy with all that kind of falsetto screaming stuff. So when it came to auditioning for the part eventually, that was kind of that was in my voice. That was the easiest part. It was the acting stuff I'd never had any training in. So it was all of that was a very new experience to me. But the singing part, that wasn't a problem. And because I've been singing in bands, we used to play clubs and pubs around Swansea, it kind of builds up a resilience. So the 8 shows a week, after singing a couple of hours of screaming rock songs, it wasn't too bad on the old voice.
Yeah. Now, did they say luck is opportunity meeting preparedness? Is that the right way around? Something like that. It's all very well singing in pubs and clubs around South Wales, but I just remember, because I would think I was doing an afternoon show from Swansea in those days for the BBC, and every so often I'd bump into you just outside the BBC, and you'd be walking to the station. I say, "Oh, Steve, how's the band going?" Yes, right. I'm just off to London, and suddenly the name Andrew Lloyd Webber kept on coming up into conversations. I mean, how did that connection happen from... Swansea's a long way, isn't it, from everywhere sometimes?
Yeah, well, my kind of journey, if you like, that's a stranger word, but I was in art college in Swansea, studying for a degree in art, and I had a particularly bad breakup with this girl, decided to leave art school because she was still there, and I started being a piano removal for a couple of years, working with my friend Ian Marvelli, who I was in a band with. He had shifter removals. And a friend of mine, Johnny Hodge, was trying to audition for Leith College Performing Arts course. And he called me and said, would I come and sing Bohemian Rhapsody? Because he was going to audition as a guitarist to get on the course. And I said, yeah, I'll come and sing that. So I remember going, and Alan Good, who passed away a few years ago, who was a lovely musician and teacher and instigator of good stuff. Good drinker as well, Al. During the audition, he said, hey, you sound good. This sounds great, man. Do you want to come and do the course? And I went, yeah. So I joined the course kind of by accident at Leith College and was literally there a few months. And during the first few months, we put on a performance of Jesus Christ Superstar. And I'd had there's so many weird synchronicities, Mal and Johnny, weird twists of fate and that I could talk about. It's so weird, the whole thing. Years before, I'm just going to go back up a couple of years, we'd moved down to Bournemouth, Poole, but I was in, my dad had a job in Bournemouth and we lived in Poole for a couple of years. And I went to this school called Henry Harbin, and I remember going into a religious education class one day, and the teacher played Jesus Christ Superstar, the film version with Ted Neely. And I remember watching it, and I'd never seen a musical before. We didn't grow up in a particularly musical household. So I was kind of looking at this and going, what, people are singing at each other? And they were all kind of hippies dancing. I couldn't get my head around it. But I remember seeing the guy Ted Neely playing Jesus, and I thought to myself, I'm going to meet that dude one day. And I had, I was about 12 years of age, and I thought, I'm going to meet this guy. There was some sort of future memory or something very weird. Anyway, going back to college, we did a performance of Jesus Christ Superstar, and they said, oh, you're going to be Jesus. And at the same time, the teacher of piano and singing, Rian, said to me, why don't you learn these couple of songs? I'd started dating this other girl, and she knew this girl, and she said, if you sing this song, this girl and her mum are going to love it. And I was like, yep, I'm all in. So they taught me Bring Him Home from Les Miserables, because I sounded a bit like Colm Wilkinson, the guy who originated the role. I've got that kind of floaty, falsetto thing in my voice. So I remember it was on one of those old cassette recorder, the piano cassette recorders. Rian played the piano, and I took it home and sang it for my girlfriend at the time and her mum, and they both started crying, and I thought, whoa. And they were like, this sounds great. Anyway, we did our week at the Gwyn Hall of Jesus Christ Superstar. And I remember, because part of Leith College was a sports science college, and there's big rugby guys, and they were dragged along with their girlfriends to see it. And I remember doing some of the scenes. I remember looking out in the audience, and these big kind of rugby boys were all weeping in their girlfriends' arms. And I thought, this is a powerful thing, man. Yeah. And of course, we were talking about the crucifixion, all of this, obviously. But I remember thinking, wow, this medium is a real powerful thing if you get it right. And anyway, on the very last performance, on the very last couple of moments when I was in the crucifixion scene, and I can remember like it was yesterday. It was like we built the stage with scaffolding, and I was up being crucified. I remember looking down, giving the lines, who is my mother, where's my mother? And I had this overwhelming sensation that I'd do it again, that I'd play the part again. And again, whether it's a future memory or our lives are mapped out or we're stuck in some sort of matrix and, it's all whatever, it was a very uncanny feeling. And so literally a few weeks after that, Rian, in one of our lessons, said, look, there's an open audition for Les Miserables in the stage. Why didn't you go for it? I said, yeah, what have I got to lose? So I literally got the night before we were playing, I think in the coach house down on Wine Street, and there was a bit of a scuffle and all of that business. So I literally stumbled out of the pub, got on a 3 o'clock, went home, got changed, got on a 3 o'clock train, got up to London, sat in McDonald's drinking coffee for a couple of hours, was literally wired to the moon on adrenaline and coffee, on bad coffee, because it was really bad then, it's not bad now, and got the first of the queue and went in for an open audition. And it was like everything I'd kind of read about in all, all the kind of cliched. It was a darkened stage, and the people were sitting out the auditorium, couldn't see them. There were these little angle poised lights, and they were shuffling papers. And it's like, yeah, what's your name? Steve. What are you going to sing? And I sang Bring Him Home, which, I didn't know that it's kind of the cardinal sin to go into a musical and sing the lead person's musical at the audition. But I was literally 20 years of age, didn't know my arse from my elbow, and just went for it. So I sang that. And a guy, and I sang it very like Colm Wilkinson. It was almost a facsimile of Colm's version. So the guy came up, and I'd lied on my CV, said I'd been in Fiddler on the Roof and all these things.
Really do.
I still haven't seen Fiddler on the Roof, or
You should. It's great.
I know nothing about
It's great. It's a really good show.
Is it? I'm sure
show.
it is. So this fella came up, Ken Caswell, and he said, "Oh yeah. So what things have you been in?" I said, "Oh." And I couldn't remember what I put on the CV. I said all those things on my CV, and he was like, "Yeah, you haven't been in any of them, have you?" I went, "No." So he was like, "What's your story?" And I said, I'm in bands, and I'm kind of doing this to kind of impress my girlfriend, really, if I'm really honest." And so he said, "Have you got anything else?" I said, "Yeah." And Rian had handwritten out Gethsemane. And in our version of Gethsemane, we changed the middle bit. And during the rehearsal for our version in Leith College, Rian said, "Wouldn't it be great if we changed this bit?" And in the middle of Gethsemane, the old version, the Ian Gillan version, and the Ted Neely version, in the middle, he kind of screams, "All right, I'll die," but we changed it. I say, Rian changed it, and she kind of wrote the notes in that now go, "All right, I'll die," and he goes, da 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 da, and it rises to the big screen. That was Rian's, and mine, kind of, but more Rian's little kind of thing. So he said, "Have you got anything else?" I said, "Yeah, I've got Gethsemane. Have you heard of it?" He said, "Yeah, I've heard of it." So I play, so I do Gethsemane, and I give it the full tilt, at 10 o'clock in the morning when it was. I give it the full Hoyle Swansea welcome. So the next thing, he comes up again, he says, yeah, that was good, come with me. And I'm in a room with the kind of money people and the producers and Cameron McIntosh, who owns all of the theatres, and that was it. So when I got back to college the next day, they said, "How did it go?" I said, "I went in a room and I met a couple of people, and there was a Scottish named fella." They said, "What, Cameron?" I was like, yeah, I think that's the fella, yeah, a little bloke. And Rian was like, "Bloody hell, tell me again what happened." And I was like, "Well, this happened." And they were like, "Well, that's..." So I literally, on a whim, had a couple more auditions, and then I was in the first tour in production. It was first in Manchester, and then we went to Edinburgh and Dublin. And that was basically my training. It was 18 months, and watching people who'd been to drama school and people who'd done loads of musicals, and it was just using my wits and, the kind of Swansea, what I've been taught literally.
Amazing.
The thing about you said about the acting bit, I can empathise with that, because first musical I did, the director said to me, "Keep your hands still, you're not singing a song." Because you tend to gesticulate too much when you're singing. Yes, so I said, okay. And he taught me how to act, really, because I was a singer, and a dancer.
Yeah.
And funny enough, Cameron McIntosh of that show, he was the stage manager. And I found the program, just like a little bit like that. And I wrote him a letter years later, and I said, "I've got the program." And he was so nice. He wrote back, "Oh, I remember that." He said, "I remember that show, and I remember the write-up. It said, the best material I saw was when the curtain fell at the end of the show." That was what he said.
Johnny, obviously musicals up until Jesus Christ Superstar, I suppose, or maybe West Side Story, they were very different things. They were musical comedies, weren't they? Do you remember, because you must have been in London when Jesus Christ Superstar, the original one, came out?
Yeah, well, as you say, musical comedy, that's right. It was a different ballgame. They're more, I think, things like Superstar now, they're more like rock operas. They're not really musicals, I don't think. A musical was like Guys and Dolls, you know what I mean? Where there's a lot of chat, but I mean, things like, well, all the Weber stuff really, it's like well, they're like operas, really, aren't they? Don't you think so?
So, you know...
I mean, when I was in the West End, it was... Harry Seacombe was across the road in the Four Musketeers.
Right.
And there was all sorts. There was... Judi Dench was playing... doing cabaret.
What?
She was Sally Bowles. So that's... I'm going back to 1969 now, see?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know...
I mean, Steve, then, so, you've very quickly gone from this room with all these names that, you know, are legends now, and they were pretty big back then. But to open in London, in the West End, because at that stage, your face was on every bus, wasn't it? You walking in the full robes, walking through a modern city, and you were the face of Jesus.
Yeah, so I came back to Swansea in the meantime and put my band back together, because at the end of the Les Mis run, they were auditioning for Martin Guerre that was coming into town, and they were all, you know, everybody in the cast was offered an audition, and I didn't fancy it. You know, I said, I'm going to go back to Swansea. I know it sounds so crazy now, but I went, yeah, thanks so much. I've had a lovely time. I put on 3 stone drinking Guinness in Dublin. I said, I'm going to go back, go to the gym for a while, and put my band back together. So I came back, and then a few years later, one of the fellas who was in the cast, a guy called Jonathan Greatorex, had given up acting and singing himself, and he'd become an agent because he was so bothered, I think is the right word, by everybody's everyone was saying, oh God, my agent's doing nothing. He was like, well, I could do this. And he eventually became one of the biggest agents in London. He retired early, but he was just fantastic. So he called me a couple of years later and said, hey, listen, they're auditioning for Superstar. My brother Andy had called me the same day and said, I'd just seen it on the telly. They're auditioning for Superstar. And I thought, whoa, this is one of those coincidences again. I'm going to take a listen to this. So Johnny said, come up to Guildford and do you still know that song Gethsemane? I said, yeah, I think so. So I went up and sang it in his front room. He was like, right. He got on the phone to the guy who casts a lot of Andrew's shows still, I think, a guy called David Grinrod, and said, look, if you see Steve, you're going to cast him, which was that's big talk. Yeah. So a week or so later, I was in auditioning for David, and I sang Gethsemane literally to him and a guy was playing the piano, and he started to cry, and I thought, there's a pattern emerging here. So, and then that began my journey of the 14 auditions or so over the year, you know, which was, and then right on the last audition, they brought in a guy called Zubin Vala, who was playing Romeo for the RSC at the time at the National, and who was this amazing he could do everything, man. He could play piano like a beast. He could sing like a beast, and he was a brilliant actor. So they brought him in right to the last audition, and there was this lovely chemistry, and it just worked, right? I instantly thought, God, this is some sort of, he was quite a force of nature. So I remember after that audition, he said, what do you think, mate? I said, I think we got the gig, dude. And he said, how do you know? I said, well, I've done this like for the last year, and I just got a feeling, and we both got the gig. So then began the kind of rehearsal process, which, you know, again, for me, I'd had like 18 months literally learning a couple of years previously on Les Mis, but I had no training at all, right? And it was about being in the right place at the right time. My hair was long. I looked like the archetypal Western idea of Jesus, I think, and I could sing the songs without a problem. So they took a chance right at the end. They took a chance on me. And so, literally the rehearsal process, that 8 weeks that we had, was one of the biggest learning curves in my life, you know. And the director we had, Gail Edwards, looking back, 20-something years ago, having a woman direct a big money musical like that was a big, cool thing for Andrew to do at the time. And she was brilliant, bonkers as hell, but really brilliant. And I learned so much. And again, because I had my little tape recorder and I taped everything. I taped the whole, and I found the old cassettes. While I was, during lockdown, we all had to clean out and decorate the places. Surely I'm not the only one. And I cleaned out my garage and found out a load of those cassettes, and I put them back. And the stuff she was saying was so profound, and so, it had resonance with all aspects of life. But of course, it was to do with the piece and what we were trying to do. But it was a hell of a learning curve. And then the opening night, and I tell you something I was thinking about the other day, was my martial arts background really helped me, because I did so much training in karate back in the day, and I had no real formal training in acting. But I remember Sparky Parkhouse and John Wood, my two instructors that used to be at the old leisure centre in Swansea. You do like hundreds and hundreds of, doing the stuff up and down the lines, the katas, and you do all the kind of, and I used to do loads of competition fighting. I remember Sparky saying to me, you've done all the training now, just go and be. And I remember at the time, like a 16, 17-year-old kid, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? He said, you've done it all, just go and do what you do. I'm like, whoa. And I remember that the opening night of Superstar, I remember his, old Sparky's words were resonating in my ear going, we've done all, just go and do what you do. So I literally went out and didn't do much at all, really. I just kind of let it kind of carry me along. And it was, and that's, I swear it's the old martial arts training of, just be in the moment and do all that sort of stuff. It was, yeah. But it was a hell of an experience, Mal and Johnny. It was, it was a wake-up call, I tell you. I knew I was alive.
You know, you say about making people cry. It always reminds me of an old joke about the guy singing in a club, And he comes to the end and he's singing My Hen Rad Van Ade. And there's a guy in the front and he's crying his eyes out. He said, you're a Welshman? He said, no, I'm a musician.
Yeah.
But see, Elvis, I mean, you take Elvis, he's always doing martial arts on stage. People don't realise that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's doing
I was a
all
massive
that.
Elvis fan.
I mean, when I saw him doing the American trilogy, another song that blew me away. The way
my God, I love
it.
that song.
I know it was done by Mickey Newbury first. He's the one that actually put it together. But Elvis is, I don't know what, I mean, you can't say Elvis was the greatest singer in the world, but he had charisma. And he had this, I don't know, the way he sang that, it'd make the hair go up the back of your neck.
Yeah. Do you know, John, I put that on, every time that comes on, I've got to stand up and salute it every single time. And at the end, when he goes to that note, and he nearly gets there.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's just incredible. Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. I love that song so much.
Obviously, it's 8 shows a week. Johnny, you did that in your West End career, and you've done it in theatre as well. That is an incredible strain on your voice, your body, your head, your whole mentality, particularly as you're playing Jesus. I mean, whatever people think about the character, this character's played a big role in many millions of people's lives for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Did things happen? I mean, I was wondering, did you feel the spirit?
I did, actually, Mal. I got to be honest with you. And I know you're a religious man, and I definitely felt something going on. Definitely. Yeah. The 8 shows a week thing, that's kind of, you got to stay in shape, and I didn't drink, I don't smoke, but I didn't drink for a year. Liters and liters of water, just to keep everything hydrated, and warming up and warming down, all those technical things, which are super, super, not staying out, not going out. Because going out to parties and kind of shouting over people, that will kind of make your voice tired and get you into some problems and all that. So I was very, very mindful. And I was young. And of course, when you're younger, your voice can do other, lots of things we can't do as we get older, obviously. But I was very mindful. I thought, I've got this gig. I'm one of the luckiest people around. I've won this gig. I want to kind of take care of it. And I remember Andrew wrote me a letter. Again, I found it during the lockdown. And he said some beautiful things in this letter, but he also said, you've got a beautiful instrument, or I'm paraphrasing, and please take care of it. And I remember thinking, no, I will do that. I'm going to really take care of it. And I have all these years. I still warm up every day and warm down and do all that sort of stuff. But I did feel something move, Mal. I got to be honest, because even if you're not religious, and even if you subscribe to the idea that Jesus might not have been, he might be an amalgamation of several different kind of pagan god type ideas, and even so, 2,000 years of people believing in something, I believe, will have an effect on some. It's almost like thought will create it, and so I was very aware a few times of some really interesting kind of strange phenomena that went on, and it was very, very odd.
It's funny you say. I went to Israel once. I was working on a cruise ship, and I went to Nazareth and all these places. I'm not, and I don't know what I am really. I think I'm a daytime atheist. But at night I say my prayers. No. And when I was there, it makes you think you've got this like 2,000 years of. And I was in the Garden of Gethsemane and the trees are that old. And you think, what the heck, and it does get you. You see, I mean, unbelievable. You know what you're saying about looking after your voice? I met a fellow called Vic Damone. Do you remember Vic Damone? He was He's the one Sinatra said, if God could sing, he'd sound like Victor Moon.
Oh, yes.
Anyway, he was a friend of Pavarotti. And he said to Pavarotti once, he said, it must be great owning a voice like that. And Pavarotti said, no, the voice owns me.
Yeah.
And he had to look after it, because if he didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I remember.
Well,
People don't realise what you got to do.
No.
When you're a singer, you've got to look after it.
Yeah. I went to see Steve. I went to see Steve in it was the Lyceum, I suppose, wasn't it? Was it the Lyceum?
Yeah.
And it was a fantastic performance. Obviously, you know I'm a big fan, on and off camera, and at the end. I mean, I often tell this story if I'm doing a concert or something, because you gave me the thumbs up, didn't you?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's right.
Because now, can you remember what it was? I mean, I remember the story as this, so I might be making it up. I remember you saying you knew I was in the house. You were looking at me all the way through the show.
I could see you.
You got up on the cross, and there I was. And actually, from a spiritual point of view, I've often thought about that. I got up on the cross, and there I saw you, Maldwyn. So and then I went back afterwards, and you were in your dressing room. Because it's this intense experience. The music is enormous, and the story's enormous, and it's it's Judas rather than Jesus, isn't it? It's like all this stuff going on in your head if you come from a church background. And I walked in, and there was Jesus with baby wipes wiping the blood off him. It was just so
wiping the blood.
Every day you got covered in blood, didn't you?
Jesus gave you the thumbs up.
He did, from the cross.
From the cross.
It was just like that. It was amazing. It was amazing.
And you remember, Mal, we had everyone in the cast was just killer, man. We had people who come from the RSC, and some just everybody was stellar. They had the pick of the crop, and everybody was just on fire. It was just, and everybody could do any part. When you see people in shows being swings and being understudies, they can all do the equally as good. It's just that something happened that I had a lucky loincloth, they used to call it. I looked good in a loincloth back in those days. I think that's what won me the part. But it was so visceral and violent, the whipping scene in particular. And I remember that I had ropes on my hands, and I had to hold the ropes. And because it was on a circular stage, I had my arms pulled apart by these ropes. And everybody doing the whipping scene, when Pilate's counting, somebody would hold this chalice which was filled with blood, a mixture of molasses and real blood, molasses and fake blood, and then they kind of take handfuls of it and come and slap it across my body, and so I was literally covered in blood at the end, and it was such, and the lights were blaring, they had a white light blaring, so it was just beautifully done, and it was balletic but very, very kind of horribly violent as well.
Horribly beautiful. That was the thing. It was horribly beautiful. It was beautiful, but it was just like every whip, made you cry.
It was, and then of course, the cross would have been on stage for a while, and then it was, oh God, and the way they did the crucifixion, when they literally put me on the cross, nailed me, and then they kind of raised me up with these ropes. It was just, and there was one night where the kind of the way that the cross fit in the floor, it kind of slipped out. So the cross was literally falling forward. And there was a guy in the cast called Philip Farentinos, who was about 6'7". He was built he was like an Adonis, just this huge kind of muscle guy. And he came and shoved his shoulder in and stopped the thing from falling forward.
Goodness, wow. Goodness.
Honestly, it was just, and then they managed to kind of write it and put it in and all of that. But it was, I still have nightmares about that, because I wouldn't have been able to do anything. I was tied in. It would have been like that. Good night.
Yeah. Why did you stop? Why? I mean, I know the show kept on going, and it went to Broadway. Why did you stop?
Well, because 400 crucifixions was quite enough for a start. They wanted me to carry on, and there were a few things at the time. I'd been off. The only reason I tried to get the gig originally, when Johnny called me that day and said, "Hey, they're auditioning for Superstar. Do you want to go?" He said, "What do you want to do? What's your plan? What's your 5-year plan?" I said, "Well, I've been writing songs and I want to get signed by Sony." That's what I said. And literally, he said, "Okay, let's try and work something out." And then he said, "Look," he said, "it's a long shot, but if you get this gig and you're as good as I think you could be in it, I think record companies will come to you." And I said, "Well, let's give it a whirl." The naivety of youth, right? When you think about it now, what a gargantuan hill to climb. But I said, yeah, let's give it a whirl. So I did all that, and literally in 3 months, I think Universal came down, offered me a gig, Polydor offered me a gig, which is the company Andrew was with, and Sony came. And I signed to Sony Records. So I was literally signed and started working on material for my album during the end few months of the show. I was absolutely knackered, mine. But so that was kind of the main reason why I didn't stay on. I had somewhere to go, and so literally the night that the show finished, we went and did one extra show in Norway in Hell. We did a Jesus Christ Superstar in Hell in Norway the night after, and then I went down to France for basically a year and started working on my album. It came around again a few years later. I was asked if I'd go to Broadway and do it on Broadway, but I was in Canada at the time writing, and I was just in the flow then of trying to make a record. And looking back, have I got a regret? Maybe it'd have been good to go to Broadway, but the show that they took out only lasted a few months anyway, and then it got slated, and so I think I dodged a bit of a bullet with that. Actually,
a lot of fate attached to it.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, Johnny. Well, you've been in the game for a long time, and TheMal as well. Things have to be right, and the timing has to be right, and sometimes luck plays a massive part. But again, as you said, you can make your own luck sometimes, but it was just an amazing time in life, and I'm still talking about it 23 years on or whatever. And a few years ago, Mal, I got asked if I'd do the show again. Ted Neely, who's now in his 70s, he's still playing Jesus and still being amazing, actually. I was asked if I'd go and be his alternate in Holland. So I went out and met him. I didn't do eventually the show, but I took the opportunity to go out and meet Ted Neely. And it was like a full circle from when I was like 12 years of age. He just said, I knew I was going to meet you, dude. I knew it. So it was, So there's been like all the way along, though, there have been these weird coincidences and synchronicities. And I do believe, that there is kind of a blueprint or something that we kind of come into this life with.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I do believe that's it.
All right. Well, look, the plan is still going. I think if you do have time in future weeks, it would be good to do part 2, because there's all the music about the stories. There's Steve Balsamo, the artist, who's just about to make a brand new record. Well, I say that every time I talk to you. And you've got a new band with Andy Collins and Pete Riley. So there's lots of stuff going on in your life. But thanks for sharing your first part of the story. It's an amazing story, isn't it? The boy
it's fantastic.
Doing the pubs and clubs, and then suddenly on the West End in that role, and we're killing it. Absolutely. Hey, Stevie B, speak to you soon. And Johnny,
thank you, Mal. Thank you, Johnny.
Goodbye from me.
All the best, Steve. Great to hear from you. Fantastic.
Thank you, guys. Thanks. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.